when you're in an industry, especially like ours, where it's constantly changing, and you really have to have your finger on the pulse, which we do, which is a huge part of our success. I mean, it could be week to week that you need to make a big technological like change or pivot in your approach. Any sort of overarching financial control of your company, where you've got a board of VCs to answer to, or you got to pass some sort of like 3/5 vote or something, or a majority vote to make even like a let's say medium-sized technical decision that's going to slow you down.
Welcome to Leaders on a Mission, the show that brings you inspiring stories and bold leadership from entrepreneurs solving real-life challenges. And I think with that in mind, just consider this, right? By 2050, the world will need to produce 70% more food to feed a growing population. Yet we're facing labor shortages, climate pressures, and soil degradation like never before. And this is where I want to kind of introduce this week's guest, Arthur Erickson, CEO and co-founder of Helio. Now, Helio are a really interesting company. They're really redefining precision agriculture with autonomous drones. And I think on this episode, we're really going to kind of dive into blending, I suppose, robotics, data, and software kind of together, really, to I suppose, transform, to hear how you guys are going around transforming farming from the ground and air. And also we'll just discuss really some of the unconventional funding strategies that are going to really help you on your growth trajectory, which is a fascinating story. So, Arthur, thanks so much for kind of coming on. There's so much to discuss today, and really look forward to diving straight in.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Simon. I'm excited.
Awesome. So tell me, I think you founded the company.
Correct.
I think roughly around 10 years ago, right?
It was January of 2015, so a little over 10 years ago. That's right.
Right. You're almost like a veteran out there now, right?
Yeah, you could say that. It's a very young industry, so 10 years is actually quite a while in the drone.
Yes. Yeah. That really is. So just tell me, I suppose leading up to you kind of co-founding the company, right? What was the gap? What was the big idea, I suppose, that you were that you wanted to solve, as it were?
Yeah. Well, I wish I was that proactive back then, and prescient. But basically, and I've told the story a few times. I was studying aerospace engineering at UT Austin, so University of Texas in Austin, the main campus, and they have a good aerospace program, and their program focuses on UAVs, so drones, or I guess we call them UAS now, unmanned aerial systems, and that's a really good vehicle for learning, right? Because you've got the mechanical side of it, the aerospace, so the fluid dynamics over the propellers, you've got the control systems, the software, all that combines to make these drones, and that's it's ripe for learning in multiple fields, right? And so our program was a systems engineering approach to that, where you're kind of tying in all these different disciplines. But the point is, through that program, I gained the prerequisite skills to basically just make a quick, cheap little DIY drone and start tinkering with it. And so, being naive and being, 21, 22 years old, I was just, going on my phone, as kids do, scrolling, and I just kept seeing article after article about Google and Amazon and a startup at the time called Flirty and a startup called Zipline, which is actually a rather big company that just did a big Series D, I think. All these companies were making the news saying, "Oh, we're going to use drone delivery to revolutionize this or that," and mostly at the time the dialogue was around drone delivery, so like last mile logistics. And I got really excited about that. Frankly, to put it simply, I saw dollar signs. Being a young person who was always, for whatever reason, just driven to entrepreneurship and the idea of like building a company and driving that. I was just like, hey, I can build drones. They seem to be hot and they're in the news every day. So why not just start a company? And that's really as far as my mind went back then. It was really simple, like one-dimensional thinking, just like drones are cool. They make money. Make company with drones. And so it sounds silly, but I didn't really have an initial target. So I just sat down with my co-founders and we roughly thought let's get in on this last mile logistics delivery game, because we thought, hey, if Amazon and UPS and whatnot are interested, we could beat them to the punch, so to speak, and maybe just get acquired. And it could be like a quick little like 2 or 3 year like classic startup story where we make a nice little software hardware package. We democratize it, so to speak. So we were trying to have the delivery drone be accessible to small to medium businesses, even like individuals. So if you want to just deliver something to your friend, you could. And so we thought there was value there in building that network, and then we would just like flip it to Amazon or Google. That didn't happen. So quickly, that was all like proven to be a very myopic business plan. And within a few years, so the company I mentioned at the top started in 2015. So after about, let's say, a year and a half of just tinkering and messing around with this drone delivery space, and that's a whole other saga I could go into if you wanted me to. But after about a year and a half of that, we quickly realized this is not a good fit for us, not for our team, not for our resources. It's not a good value proposition. So we pivoted fully to agriculture, which is, of course, what Helio does predominantly today. I mean, 99% plus of our business is ag focused. I won't say all of it because we do some other side projects. But yeah, we kind of started off in like a wandering in the desert Moses type of period where we're just finding ourselves as a company. I think that's like fairly normal. But we very quickly, I say quickly, relatively speaking, within 2 years, we said, no, agriculture is the way to go. And we've been doing that ever since. So for the past 8 years of the company, it's been only agriculture.
Yeah. And tell me about like why, how did you come across that with agriculture? Was it a co-founder? Was it one of your co-founders? And you know, what led you to agriculture? What was the issue?
Um, it was actually just kind of serendipity, and we can get to spiritual stuff later. But maybe that's just how the universe works, because we were down in Costa Rica doing a drone delivery project, and so we weren't really making money, but we're at least, let's say, making enough money to Costa Rica is cheap, right? So we're living in a suburb of Costa Rica, barely making enough money to pay rent and food and whatnot for our founding team. And by day, we were doing drone deliveries. By night, we were iterating and like updating our platform so we could do better drone deliveries. And it was going okay. And it was technically a very fun and challenging thing for us to do. And we loved it from that perspective. But again, no growth for the company. I mean, barely breaking even. And so one day we were just out. Who knows what we were doing? Maybe we were about to go do a delivery or something. I forget exactly where we were going, but I distinctly remember me and my co-founders at the time. You know, we're all in a car together and we're stuck in traffic on this bridge, and then we look over the bridge, or let's say down the bridge, and there's a farmer that's spreading fertilizer or some sort of granular chemical onto the field by hand. And then we all sort of had an aha moment where we were talking to each other in the car, being like, that's odd that it's 2019 or 2018 at the time, and drones exist and whatnot, and these machines exist, and this guy still by hand is spreading this chemical onto his field. So it can't be precise, it can't be cost effective, maybe it's dangerous for the person to be touching these chemicals. So we just had a moment there where like that seems really inefficient. Like I bet you there's a fit there for what we're doing. And then that developed. It wasn't like overnight, but over the next few days and weeks, we talked about it more and more. And we're like, let's give this an honest try. So thankfully, through our project down there in Central America, we had met some locals, some Central American people who did have some connections in the ag industry, because, of course, it's a very agricultural driven economy down there, and so everybody knows the person that's in ag, essentially in those countries. So we just said, hey, like, we're thinking we're doing this delivery thing, but what if we just found a farmer or two and just tried to spray their crops and see where that lands? So that was the natural segue into it. And then, like I'm saying, basically that's how it happened, just through some network connections down there. We got in front of some like the cooperatives. They have a different word for them down there. They call them ingenios, but they're basically just big co-ops. So working from like the leadership there, we got some contracts to spray their crops, and then started making some real money. We thought it was real money back then for us, but it was, getting paid like $8 per acre, but you could spray a few hundred acres a day. So we started making some serious cash, and then loved it from that perspective, but also just loved the mission a lot more. It resonated with myself and my team a lot, just to be creating technology that was helping feed people and like potentially helping this farmer that we saw, not touch chemicals all day. We really like that versus the kind of like the overarching philosophy of delivery, which is like get rich people stuff faster and like yeah, not to crap on it. I mean, I think that's a really fun technical challenge too, and of course I want to live in the Jetsons future where everything's drone delivered too, but I think most people would admit that it's a little more meaningful, I think, to create technology to help grow food and like especially like in poorer countries versus just helping like a rich girl get her coffee faster. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, no, get it. Absolutely. And I would have thought that the application would have changed a fair bit in terms of what problems you're looking to solve and what the issues that the farmer has. If you talk about 2018 and we're in 2025 now, it's probably been quite a turbulent ride, hasn't it, for farmers in that 7-year period, right? And there's all sorts of challenges that they face, So maybe talk a little bit about, like how, what are those challenges that you're looking to really, and the value you're looking to provide, as it were?
Yeah, so I think farming is interesting, and as an aside, I didn't grow up on a farm. I've grown up here in South Texas, and everybody down here has friends that are farmers and ranchers. So it's not like I wasn't around it. Grew up in the outdoors and everything, doing scouts and whatnot. So, point is, this has been a learning opportunity for me. So I'm 32 now. For the past 10 years, I've been doing ag work. So for a third of my life, I've been in agriculture. So I could start to say like for a big chunk of my adult life, I've been doing this. So even though I wasn't raised here, I think I've come to understand a lot of their issues. And one thing about farming that's been constant across millennia is you're at the whims of a lot of things that are outside of your control, and mostly historically it's been nature, right? So you don't know how much rain you're going to get in a given season. You don't know if there's going to be a drought. You don't know if there's going to be a pestilence like a locust swarm or something. And so farming has always been about being conservative and trying to be as resourceful as possible because you don't know when the next quote unquote disaster is going to hit. And so it's really just about, it's cliche, make hay while the sun shines. So while you've got the right weather, you got to be very proactively, planning, growing as bountiful as you can, make the most out of it, and then just hunker down. And so I think what's different now, my view of what's different now in the modern world is that through globalization, you have an additional force of nature is how I'd look at it. So instead of just like worrying about droughts and whatnot, now it's like you don't know if Trump is going to do a tariff, and like that's essentially out of your control. I mean, yes, you can lobby and whatnot, get together, but basically these are forces of nature, Trump and other world leaders, and just global macroeconomic trends that could completely change the calculus for your grow operation. So I think more than ever, there's even more uncertainty economically for farmers. And it's challenging because it was already hard enough dealing with the universal force or whatever you want to call it that's creating all these natural ebbs and flows. But now it's like you've got human beings, Trump, the Brazilian like Luna, like their regime and everything, like affecting commodity prices. And so it's just more variables. And so this brings me to my final point, which is I think what drones and what precision agriculture is doing is just reducing, again, trying to reduce the amount of variables, because now with more information, by utilizing these data platforms, so scouting drones or satellite imagery, NDVI analysis, all these AI algorithms, drones for precision spraying, you're again taking all this chaos and making at least some sense of it so you can make better decisions. And therefore, by making more informed decisions as a farmer, you can do what I said earlier, which is spend your resources really wisely. And so you're in a much better position when this inevitable crisis arises, because like every grow season you're gonna have something go wrong, whether that be a tariff or a rain event or lack thereof. So I think precision agriculture is all about clearing the fog of war in the farming industry, which has become even denser lately.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for that. Absolutely. And when we had our first discussion, you spoke about the triple black diamond. That really kind of caught my eye, because I suppose I wanted to dive into a little bit around what the product is and what it kind of does, because I know you've mentioned around, I suppose, there's a software, there's a hardware component, there's an insights component. Clearly, you're building these really technically challenging things as well. So maybe give us a little bit of a view on the product concept and, first of all, around that. And then we could maybe talk a little bit about the journey.
Sure. So, yeah, my CFO, Mike Oda, one of our co-founders as well, he likes to bring up the triple black diamond analogy a lot because it's startup lingo. It's not like we invented it, but people talk about hardware startups being very hard, and they make the ski slope analogy. Part of what I just said ties into that. So let me give you an example like the other way. So again, not to disparage these people, but I think it's a little easier of, let's say it's a simpler, clearer mission when it's like, okay, I'm going to create a dating app, and how you measure success of this dating app. And you could build it on a mobile platform relatively easily, right? And you can get it on Google Play Store or the App Store, and they could get out to like millions of people already. You just like pump money into ads. So how you measure success there is just like engagement and like more people being on the platform. And these are very clear KPIs. And if you just like keep greasing the wheels and putting more money into it, more or less, like you can see some success, right? Now it's oversaturated. So not a good analogy now, but like you understand, technically speaking, it's a much easier mission. Now, when you look at the drones, it's like, okay, yeah, like, so I'll give you another analogy. So, or example, you could have your dating app crash, and guess what? Like, oh, like Sally can't send a message to Joe for 5 minutes, whatever. You get you restart your server, you're back online. Now, when you're flying a drone, especially a drone that costs $20,000, and you're in the startup phase, you crash it. There's a software bug with your drone. It physically crashes the drone. The drone explodes, and you're out opportunity cost because maybe you were making money with that, or you're about to sell that drone to somebody. You've got to rebuild it, so that's cost right there. And you lost, yeah. I mean, you're out like $20K plus the opportunity cost that you lost. So when you're a really young startup, especially like in Helio's case, we didn't even get VC funding. We were bootstrapping this just from internship money, essentially, just our own pockets. Every crash we had was extremely like monetarily
Painful.
damaging. Yes, and
painful
in every sense. I mean, physically, literally physically painful, because often you would crash it into like a sugarcane field, and you have to go through the thicket, and like you'd have to watch out for snakes and all that. So very, very painful. So just from a development cycle standpoint, much harder than just like a mobile app, because there are physical consequences for the mistakes you made. So it was the combination of software and hardware. Both things had to be working perfectly. I mean, close enough to perfectly to not crash the thing.
Right. Did this happen quite, just interesting, right? Did this happen, what kind of context? I'm just picturing it now. All that work, all that money, you're building it, and then you're testing it in an autonomous way, right?
Yes,
yeah. And then all of a sudden, you lose it to whatever.
There could be hundreds of ways to lose them. Yes, which we experienced.
Right. Yeah. How often? What was the kind of percentage of, ones you would lose? For
High at the beginning, like anything. You can imagine it's like a kid learning how to ride a bike. Like when you start out anything, you're going to fall a bunch. So, I mean, maybe as high as like 5 or 10% of the flights we would do in like the first year or two would result in some sort of accident, not necessarily a full crash, but like some sort of failure. Sensor goes out, and like maybe you can save it, maybe you don't. But it was all sorts of stuff. And part of this was it was us as an engineering team, like gaining skills, and like we made a lot of mistakes. Also, the industry was like very young. And so we were, again, being on a budget, buying a lot of just consumer grade stuff. So hobby grade drone stuff, which really wasn't that reliable. And we were really like pushing it to the limits, because instead of just like buying a little hobby kit and making a drone that you might fly for 20 minutes, we were putting these on big heavy payload drones and flying them for like 10 hours a day in the hot sun with chemicals flying around and everything. So we were really challenging the hardware, this consumer grade hardware. And thus we saw a lot of just board failures on the GPS units. We saw power failures where the BECs, the battery limiting circuits, would just blow out. The ESCs, the electronic speed controllers and motors, would blow out. So a lot of hardware reliability issues. But on the software side, of course, like the software stuff, we've always been better at. Our CTO, Nikhil, is like a genius programmer. So like it's rare that we had just a software issue cause a crash or anything serious, but we had software issues just causing a lot of snags. So there would be a lot of just like little ticky tacky stuff, like, oh, like it needs a firmware update, and like, or like this script would time out and like not execute properly. So on that case, it was more painful when the software messed up. It was more painful and like, oh, we just got out here, so we drove 2 hours into the mountains to spray this co-op's crops. Now our software is like telling us we got this bug and we can't spray. So we just like lost a whole day of work. And it's embarrassing. It looks bad in front of the customer. So like the hardware issues were really painful. The software issues were like really frustrating and annoying, but not so physically painful. But it could be anything. Like I had mentioned, like GPSs would go out, and then like basically if a GPS goes out, or if both of them go out, because we try to be redundant, drone doesn't know where it is, right? So in auto mode, it could easily just steer itself into the ground or into a tree, which happened quite frequently. We didn't even have obstacle avoidance in the beginning days. That really hadn't been commercialized yet for people like us. So we didn't have any radars or lidars on there, so the drone could just hit a tree. And so it was a very tedious process for us, like scouting out the farms before we sprayed them and making sure that the boundary the drone was flying in wouldn't intersect with any tree branches or fence lines or something. So we had a lot of issues like that. But we've come, of course, like so far in the past decade, and so a lot of those problems are just distant memories. I mean, we still feel them in our bones, but we've solved most of that stuff. So crash rate now, like by comparison, we have hundreds of customers and about 1,000 drones out in the wild right now. Crash rate is like less than 0.5% probably. Depends on what you define as a crash, because a lot of it's like user error, but it's quite low. So maybe just like a few dozen incidents per season.
Tell me, what do you think's been the biggest, when you think about the hardware, software, and how the technology has developed over the last kind of 10 years, as it were? What have been the biggest leaps that have been made to really, make it so much more robust now? What have been the biggest, I suppose, enabler?
Well, this all started because essentially a smart group of people in China figured out. So, okay, the U.S. invented drone technology way back then, right? So, like 40s, 50s, whatever. They're using radio-controlled planes for World War II type of purposes and beyond that. But fast forward to, let's say, the early 2000s, the Chinese people, just generalizing, but Chinese companies who were already producing all the consumer electronics, so the microprocessors and whatnot that go into cell phones and little GPS units. One company, DJI, very famous company, of course, really took the idea and ran with it that, hey, you could put these like cell phone computing components into a flying machine, a drone, and there you've got the processing power to handle the control schema and everything, and the radio telemetry and whatnot. So they popularized it. Chinese company DJI popularized it and made it accessible to consumers from a price point standpoint. So that really like kicked off the industry. It's taken the consumer electronic hardware, putting it into a flying machine, and then producing thousands of them and doing all the marketing and whatnot that DJI, I'll say, thankfully did for everybody. I mean, DJI created the industry that we're in now. And I've got I have a bone to pick with them because they're like my biggest rival, but of course, got to respect what they did. So yeah, it's just like, let's say the democratization of like these small, microelectronics that really made this possible. And then since then, I'll say like the batteries are extremely important, right? I mean, everything on the drone is extremely important because it all has to work. But initially, the batteries we were using in the industry 10 years ago weren't great. So with a heavier payload drone, agricultural drone like we use, you might only get a few minutes of flight time, and that definitely wasn't enough. So the batteries, in part thanks to like the EV industry really taking off, have improved a lot over the last 10 years as well. So I think maybe you had lithium batteries back then that only had like 80 or 90 watt hours per kilogram in terms of density. And I know maybe not everyone technically understands like what the difference is, but by comparison, now you have like lipo batteries that can get up to 350 or 400 watt hours per kilogram. So nearly like a 4 or 5x increase in the energy density of the batteries that we use in the industry, which of course leads like pretty directly to said increases in flight time and whatnot. So going from 5 minutes to 25 minutes, being able to lift more payload, go further, and really making them passing that minimum threshold needed for this to be a practical operational thing.
Yeah, awesome. I suppose really when you've set the company up, you're taking and you're applying agriculture and you're looking at some of the times your drones fly for, you're probably taking a bet on the battery technology marketplace as well, as much as anything else, right?
Yeah. And that's, again, I think part of why it makes it a triple black diamond is like there's these unknowns in the industry where you kind of have to wait. And I hate that as like a go-getter type of entrepreneur person. I really hate, and I've wrestled with this idea like, oh, like the solid state batteries are just around the corner. And like you're reading all these papers from MIT and it's like, oh, these scientists like 10 years ago found out how to do this new battery chemistry. And it's like, that's awesome. It's just a matter of time before it gets commercialized, right? Right. And you're like hoping it comes out, but it's always slower than you want it to be. And so I've even as a, we've explored alternative fuel sources, not just batteries, because we got kind of sick of waiting for the battery industry. But just when you go to do that, when you go to invest time and money into like a hybrid engine, it's like, oh, then the battery finally came out. So it's funny how it works that way. But yeah, you're right. You're definitely in the leadership position here from a technical perspective. It's trying to time these industry trends right, so you can launch a product like right at the apex, or let's say just like the intersection. That's probably a better metaphor here, of like right when this battery chemistry comes out and it's safe enough, it's reliable enough. You want to be the first guy on the market that's utilizing it heavily, so you're standing out from everybody else. So that's kind of like what we're trying to go through right now is as the industry becomes more commoditized and we're competing more on just at scale level versus just like novel technology level. Now it's about like what can you integrate, what one or two different like things of the year, flavors of the year can you integrate to like really stand out. And so like if you look at the car industry, Toyota's like we're going to go hybrids. Toyota does a lot of hybrids. Ford, on the other hand, didn't really do that. Ford went electric vehicle line, but also just like their traditional line. So like that's a different choice these two big automakers made. We'll see where it ends up. I mean, I'm a fan of Toyota. I don't. My wife has one. I don't have one, but I think it was a good move for them. They executed it well. But time's going to tell, who wins, the hybrids or the electrics or still just the classic combustible engine. So same thing for drones. It's like we might choose one battery chemistry, this other company chooses hybrids, blah blah blah, and like we need to see who wins out.
Yeah, absolutely. When you talk a little bit about the commoditization to a certain degree, and is this where you find the value in the data as well, and it becomes more about kind of those insights and what you could do with the data that you're finding, as it were?
Yes, great point. Yeah, for sure. That's like another differentiator, and that's something that here at Helio we really do try to focus on that because it speaks to a lot of current event issues here in the U.S. Right. So there's a lot of just concern over data privacy, as we all know. I mean, Zuckerberg was in Senate talking about where does the data go and whatnot. So at Helio, we have a very let's say consumer friendly data policy. Like we don't share your data with anybody. It's just yours, and of course we have it to, as they say, improve the product, which is true. But we're not giving it to any third parties. And so what we want to do with the data, though, is I mean, beyond the commodity of the hardware of the drone, just make the platform smarter and smarter. Make the drone work for you versus you working for the drone, which in a lot of cases actually ends up happening. But and I can go into a little bit like what I think agriculture needs is because it literally it deals with organic systems, and organic systems are very complicated. Reasons we explained earlier. I mean, there's just like so many deus ex machina factors that are hard to model, and so what you need in agriculture, if we're talking about algorithms and AI and machine learning that optimizes it for identification of pests or optimization of crops in general, you need ground up, let's say crowdsourced data to be shared. So what I'm imagining is like in Ohio, you've got a different type of fungus that's affecting your corn than you do in Texas typically. And so if you're an Ohio farmer or a group of farmers using Helio's drones, you should be able to take pictures and share them if you want to feed them into an algorithm that's going to help you better identify corn through the network effect of other Ohio farmers identifying corn issues. So you combine all the data, of course, more data is just like more accurate results. So like there's going to be like a little, a pocket an Ohio themed model that's built out by and for these Ohio farmers, and you can again choose to opt into that. And then in Texas, it's going to be different. It's going to be the Texas model, and so farming is just so regional and so dependent, like on those variables, that you need to have like this bottom up, not top down approach to it when it comes to like building out these automated tools. So that's the direction we're headed, and so we're trying to give you the option to make your data combined with other people's data, so you can have better and more robust insights in your specific area. And so it's gonna be like this, or like ebb and flow, where like the model might work in Ohio for a few years, but then it's going to stop working because nature finds a way, and then the pests get smarter and evolution and whatnot. So then, like, that's going to stop working. But then you might, at the macro level, we might be able to start playing with the data and be like, okay, well, what worked in Texas now might work in Ohio because that pest has migrated to the Ohio region. So, and I'm getting like very nitpicky now, but like I'm trying to paint a picture of that. Like, this is going to be a very flowing data process versus just like what you're looking at for like the TikTok algorithm, which is like it's kind of universal. I mean, it is regional, but like they're trying to feed you a very specific thing to boost engagement versus listening to the variables from the
it's
from the
like
ground floor.
It's gonna move, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's gonna shift, and it's gonna be different. That's for sure. And tell me though, I mean, incredible. I mean, I think last year, circa in the region of about 12 million or so in revenue. This year, plans to achieve or to look for 20 odd or 20 plus million in revenue. That's a sizable kind of decent number. And so big congratulations with that.
Thank
you.
And
tell me what have been the, I don't know, the main kind of inflection points that have helped you get to this point, as it were, because that's substantial.
Good timing. So just good positioning. We're lucky, but also strategic that we got in when we did. Confluence of factors affecting these farmers. So commodity prices lowering and input costs increasing. All these stressors economically to farmers have made our drone solution, precision agriculture in general, very attractive. And that's all, let's say, come to a head over the past 4, 5, 6 years. So year over year, we started selling our drones in, let's say, late 2018. Since then, year over year, our sales have increased dramatically, and we've always invariably been limited by our supply. So we've just not been able to build enough drones in a given year. And even this year, we have orders pushed out already to October, and we're just trying to build them as fast as we can. So it's always been a rising demand for precision agriculture tools such as ours, given all these headwinds the farmers are facing. And so it was mostly just like right product, right technology, right time. Just really good
right
positioning.
Cost, right return on investment.
Exactly.
Right, and I would have thought
just
as well, right?
Us, like, thankfully back then, just understanding, like reading the tea leaves, so to speak, and being like, I think this is going to become a really big thing. And simply put, like it has. So that paid out for us.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Where does the market? Where in your wildest dreams? What is the market out there for your product, and what are you looking to kind of capture over the next, I don't know, 5 to 10 years?
Good question. I think the way the market is going to develop is basically we're going to build out the technology, and it's a dogfight right now. I mean, there's new entrants to this market, mostly foreign, so I'll say mostly Chinese, but new entrants to this market every day, it seems. And as you see in other industries, there's going to eventually be consolidation. So we're all fighting for market share, all trying to have our unique little path to value and differentiators. It's going to come down to, let's say, there's going to be 3 or 4 companies that end up swallowing everybody else. I'm fairly confident Helio is going to be one of them. We're already like a 15% market player, which isn't huge, but when compared to, we're a relatively small company versus these giant Chinese companies that are multi-billion-dollar companies, we're doing pretty well. So I think we've found a niche, and we're growing out value and like getting more market share just by zigging when they zag. So we're going to be one of, like, let's say 3 or 4 players, and then eventually the next step is, I think, large companies and everyone listening can just guess. I'm not going to say the big ag companies because I do have NDAs. I don't want to like say anything. I want to be very careful. But very big ag manufacturers, I would predict, or even just like private equity, like large companies, large financial that companies with a lot of financial resources will buy a bunch of these machines and then start like a lease program or like a robots as a service nationwide program. And so right now you see a lot of farmers that we sell to and agribusinesses that own and operate the drones. I think that's going to all be consolidated to a few big players, and then it's going to be more of like a hands-off transaction for the farmer. And it's like he might rent a green colored spray drone. I'm not going to say what company, but he might rent a green spray drone for a season, but he's not actually going to buy it and own the asset. So I think that's the flow you're going to see for like the dispersion of proliferation of this technology into the market personally. And that has a few advantages, if I could get into it like a little bit, but there's still like the legal aspect and the liability aspect because these are drones that they're governed by the FAA, they're flying machines. So it actually, at least right now, the way the regulations are, it makes sense for just one overarching company to have all the licenses it needs because they're a bit tedious to get. And then they can just, rent and own these drones out and have licensed professionals to maintain and operate them versus having every single farmer or operator like have to go through this licensing process, which that's streamlining, but like that's just one example of how it might be easier to do it from this centralized approach. So that's probably where it's headed. It's going to take a few years, so let's give it like another 5 to 10 years to see that really take off. But we're getting there, and it's increasing exponentially every year. Of course, the adoption of this stuff.
Yeah. No, awesome. We touched upon like really fascinating. You've steered away purposely and intentionally from venture capital, and you really leaned into kind of crowdfunding. Can just talk us a little bit through that and through that thinking towards the strategy, and how's it worked out for you?
It's worked out well. So venture capital, and speaking a bit out of school, I guess, because I wasn't around here, but my take on it was that venture capital came up during the dot-com boom, and that's where the model for venture capital fits with those types of companies. High growth, kind of like we're talking about like a dating app where it's like you're just going to focus on maximum users, forget the cash burn. Who cares how much money you're spending? Who cares how not profitable you are? If you can get enough users, then they can flip the company, and like just the network of people you have on it itself is valuable enough. So VC works well for that. And this isn't just Helio saying this, but I think a lot of founders, especially hardware founders and like AgTech founders of industries outside of just like your Silicon Valley like mobile app stuff, have found that VC, the model just really doesn't work. I mean, it's just completely different metrics that we live and die by here. So just initially, we just had an intuition that the VCs weren't speaking the same language as us, because it's not like we didn't talk to a few at the beginning. You take your meetings and you try to pitch, but the metrics that these VCs were asking for were just like, it's like, what KPIs are you guys tracking, user adoption? Like I keep harping on that. And it's like, look, right now it takes us like a week to build the drone. They're $30,000. You don't just pick up 1,000 users a week, right? You're physically building something. So that right there, of course, was just a mismatch. And we started to, just like not even bother with a lot of the meetings and vice versa. Like VCs didn't even want to talk to us because it's hardware and it's drones. It's like all double, triple black diamonds, too complicated. So I think, in summary, what it comes down to is when you're in an industry, especially like ours, where it's constantly changing, and you really have to have your finger on the pulse, which we do, which is a huge part of our success. I mean, it could be week to week that you need to make a big technological like change or pivot in your approach. Any sort of overarching financial control of your company, where you've got a board of VCs to answer to, or you got to pass some sort of like 3/5 vote or something, or a majority vote to make even like a let's say medium-sized technical decision that's going to slow you down enough in this industry that it's going to kill you, because it's just so cutthroat. You have to be so lean and so fast here. And so we were like, above all, it's not that we're like so greedy that we wouldn't want to give up part of the company. It wasn't about the equity, it was about the control and the ability for us to make the decisions because we're the people that know this industry the best. I mean, we are the founders. We built this market for ourselves thus far. So we know what we need to do and how we need to react to things. And an outside force, especially one like in New York or Miami or San Francisco, isn't really in touch with our customer base, the farmers in the Midwest, and they don't know it like we do. So ultimately, we went with equity crowdfunding through a platform called Start Engine, but there's other options. But basically, it's what it sounds like. You list your company, and there's SEC regulations governing it. And Start Engine, in our case, is the broker, so they're the middleman between the individual people and then Helio, the company. But basically, it's a platform where anybody, any Joe Schmo, as you put it, on the street can just make an account on Start Engine and then invest in Helio if they want to. So it's a bit like being on the open public stock market, but not quite. I mean, there's different rules. But yeah, that basically gave us the best of both worlds, which is the money, the capital we needed for intense growth, and then also we maintain virtually total control of Helio. And so these Start Engine investors, like all together, we've done 2 rounds so far. So we did one that had a $1 million cap and we hit that. So we oversubscribed it. That was back in 2021. We're doing another one now, which is a $5 million cap. And these caps increase with the SEC rules and whatnot. So we're about halfway through this second round. But altogether, even from the first and second round combined, we're talking about like less than 5% of Helio's equity in total. And this is all public. You could see on our raise pages, our offering memorandum and circular, so you could see this information. But we really didn't give up a lot of equity and virtually no control, right? Because this is common stock equity. They don't have any preferential treatment in terms of liquidation or anything, which is good because I think it aligns everybody. But yeah, it's a really good option if you have. Now, okay, like the negative is, I'll say, it's a winner take all. Is my take on the equity crowdfunding. You either have a great idea that, for lack of a better word, vibes with the general public, and it can get a lot of like hype and support. And Helio is fortunate because we're really good like fundamental financials. Like we make good money for a young company. We're cash flow positive, so that worked for us. But I've seen a lot of good ideas try to do crowdfunding, but they just couldn't get the traction. I mean, sometimes it's even like it's such a good idea, technically speaking, that people just don't really get it. It's like not visual enough. Our company is quite visual in the pitch. It's like you see a drone spraying stuff over some crops. You're like, okay, I get it. Like I'm, using drones for farming. But there's some companies that are like doing really cool things with data compression and whatnot, where it's just like really heady stuff, and they're good, but it's just like it's really hard to pitch that. So that's the drawback for the equity crowdfunding is that you kind of have to understand, say, online marketing quite well and the vibes to really be successful there. So for a lot of engineers, I think it's kind of tricky because they're very logical people. They just want it to be like very clear and concise. It's like this tech is great. I don't understand why people aren't investing, but it's like, oh, it's because you didn't have like a funny or like a sexy video. So that's the dichotomy.
No, awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Tell me though, like moving forward, with you being kind of cash flow positive with big growth in revenues, do you require, like, just looking at the business, it could be ripe for major investment, as it were, in terms of scale and kind of growth. Is crowdfunding going to get you financially to where you need to be, or how else are you thinking about financing?
Good question. I think Helio at this point is now looking at, let's say, not just money for the sake of money, but we do think that getting in with a very large established company could be beneficial for their distribution channel, their economies of scale that we could leverage. And in that case, of course, rationally, it makes sense to align interests. I mean, essentially get married by having them invest in your company. So then there's skin in the game and they have equity. So you winning is them winning and vice versa. So I think that we're certainly open to investment from a very strategic partner. And that's going to give us the cash we need to scale up manufacturing and distribution, but also their network and their knowledge and access. So we're not opposed to it. We just don't want it from, let's say, strictly speaking, like a money firm, like a VC firm or just like a private equity firm. It has to be a strategic partner.
Strategic partner. No, that's great. Thank you. Look, final question for me. Been a brilliant conversation. Just thinking about you and your journey over the last kind of 10 years here, like what do you think, like, maybe two or three of the biggest learnings for you as a leader? That could be personal or professional as a first-time founder and CEO.
Okay, yeah, good question. I think, and some people have the opposite take on this. And actually, we spoke offline about this. But one of my things, at least for the people that I directly work with, like my direct reports, is I hire slow. I don't hire fast. So a lot of people say hire fast and fire fast. I hire slow and fire fast. So I really make sure that people I'm hiring for usually technical roles are the right kind of person. And it's cliche, but it's definitely more about attitude, right? So if a person is a self-starter, can learn and, like, let's say, objectively analyze their own mistakes and faults and work to improve those, I can work with that even if they didn't have a lot of technical skills yet, because they can learn those on the job. So I hire slow because what I find is, I'm a nice guy. So, like, that's the problem. Like, if I hire someone, I rush into hiring someone and they're just a drag, they end up being, of course, not a positive influence, but, like, at best a neutral, or like even a negative influence on me and the rest of the team, in this hypothetical worst case scenario. Then, like, I just feel guilty firing them and whatnot. So you kind of have to separate yourself from that. But anyway, like, yeah, that's why I prefer to just be really sure about someone before I hire them. I'm very transparent with them about expectations and, like, what they can expect for career growth, and even just like the money. Like, here you're going to be making this much, but, like, you work hard, you're going to get more and more, of course. But yeah, and then if they're bad, just don't be afraid to fire them fast, because, again, it's a drag on everybody. You're doing them a favor. It's not a good fit. They can move on to something else, and then you're doing your team a favor. So that's one of my things, which is, like, hire slow, fire fast. And then I think another one is, and this one you have to take with a grain of salt too, but I think that more is lost from inaction than wrong action. So I definitely think in this marketplace, that's a good axiom where it's like, just make decisions, be decisive. Again, this isn't new logic, but if you're in the drone game, I mean, there's new technology, new drone models, new competitors coming out every 3 or 4 months. And if you're sitting around, doing all your analysis charts, being like, oh, well, is this motor better than this motor? Is this battery better than this battery? You're losing out. So, like, there's, like, the searcher algorithm or whatever. It's like, how many different things should you experiment with before actually, like, settling on one? And there's, like, some mathematical statistical answer, right? But the point is, like, yeah, just make your decisions fast, and you're gonna learn so much, just from falling on your face and making a bad decision. You can quickly correct it versus just sitting there and doing, like, the modeling for 12 months and then also falling on your face, because, like, everybody thinks they're smart. No one's smart, right? Humans all together working as a team towards one goal will eventually get there and do amazing things, but no individual human is God, right? So yeah, that's my other piece of advice.
Awesome. Yeah, love it. Thank you. That's great, Arthur. Really appreciate you coming on today. You've shared so much. It's been such a fun conversation, and learning all about kind of drone technology, and the growth of the business, and where you're heading, and the plight of the farmer, and different financing options. We covered loads here. So look, thanks so much for coming on, and we'll be rooting for you and wish you all the very best in your future.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a fun conversation. I appreciate the great questions.
And thank you. And also just to thank our listeners for tuning in to this week's episode. Really hope you enjoyed the conversation, and we'll see you on the show next time.
Yep.